Arr, arr. Come on! Come on! Come on! Arr. Can't do it. I give up. What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm talking about the brand new Terminator film. Another one. It's Terminator Dark Fate. I need you in the comments down below. Did you enjoy this movie? Were you looking forward to it? Let's talk about it. So Sarah Connor and a hybrid cyborg human must protect a young girl from a newly modified liquid Terminator from the future. That sounds familiar. That's right, guys. We have the old crew back together again. James Cameron, not as a director, but as a producer. Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor, of course. And I'll start there. I was a bit worried since, not being out of acting for so long, but not having a marquee role, she would be a bit rusty, but nope. She's great. She is the shining beacon in this film. Her emotion, especially in the first few scenes of the movie, she is so good. The big surprise of this movie was actually the fact that her performance in this film measures up to her performance in the original too. Now, obviously, I like her more in the older movies, but she's really good in this movie, guys, as well as Arnold. He's back as the Terminator once again, and oh my goodness, every single film, even the ones that I don't love as much. I said this was another Terminator sequel. Well, I'm not a big fan of the other Terminator sequels except for T2, which is, I believe, one of the best sci-fi action movies of all time. And even though I love those first two movies so dang much, I don't have an affinity for this franchise like I do other franchises, only because while the first two nailed it, the other ones, they just haven't really measured up. And because you're only, 2 for 6, 2 for 5 at this point, that's not good. Okay, I accidentally said 2 for 6. I meant 2 for 5. And now after this film, I have to go 3 for 6. And I'm not going to sit back and say I love this movie. I did not love it. I wanted it to be better than it ended up being. I do have some issues with some decisions made at the beginning of the film. There is one moment in particular that I will not spoil, but hardcore fans of this franchise as a whole may take issue with. And at first, I'm just like, okay, that's where they're going with this. I had to kind of adjust my brain a little bit, sit back, and realize that this is an alternate timeline. And Cameron came out and said this in an interview. This is an alternate version of what happened in the other sequels past Terminator 2. So this movie directly falls in line with the T1, T2 universe. This is technically the new T3, even though it's not T3. T3 happened in an alternate timeline. But here's what I'll say about that. They have tried things in those other sequels that did not necessarily work. I understand why they wanted to take a risk. I understand why they wanted to go in the direction that they did. Now, the direction that they ended up going in does involve some very familiar elements. A lot of people are saying it's the best sequel since Terminator 2. It's like, okay, that's not really the gold standard. And a lot of people are comparing this to The Force Awakens, saying, well, The Force Awakens comes out and it does a lot of the things that A New Hope did, but it does it in a different way. I feel the same way about Terminator Dark Fate. It did a lot that the original Terminator did. Now, you can also say the same for Terminator Genesis. And I get the Force Awakens comparison, but why are more people not looking at Genesis and saying they literally redid moments from the original Terminator? This is something that is a bit different. They're doing something new in the present. They're not dealing with the past, not as much time travel in this movie, trying to tiptoe around spoilers. They still do have those cool sci-fi elements, and of course, we're fighting the villain who can do really cool things, and now that we have 2019 CGI, he looks a lot cooler than maybe he did in the 80s or 90s, but what they did with those original films, especially in the first, with that low budget, man, what Cameron was able to do was awesome. And that's what I feel like these new movies are missing, the direction from James Cameron. Now, in this film, you have Tim Miller. And what Tim Miller brings is a sense of knowing what this movie is and what this film is supposed to be. And that's why, at the end of the day, I did end up enjoying it. He plays on what works so well about the original Terminators, and yes, kind of repeats certain formulaic elements, but he is doing something completely different than what these other sequels have done. And some people may not love that. But hear me out. That is the route that this movie had to go. You can't just do the same storyline. They've tried it. It did not work. They don't need to try it again in a different way. You have to do something different. You have to introduce new protagonists, new heroes that we can follow along on their new journey. kind of like what The Force Awakens did, and Terminator Dark Fate did a really good job of that. My big issue with this movie is the script and the dialogue. I don't think the script, now the screenplay where the story actually goes, I was pretty entertained by. I like some of the set pieces, and of course, Tim Miller, he's going to bring in the visual effects. They're great in some moments. Other moments, I'm like, well, it's not as good as I think they intended on it being. But overall, visuals are really cool. Some nice action scenes, some nice moments. But Tim Miller's story is really what got me. Back to the dialogue. Certain cheesy one-liners, some exchanges between the characters didn't really feel natural. I did not love some of our heartfelt moments between the new characters in Danny and Grace. I did like Danny and Grace a lot. Mackenzie Davis is one of my favorite up-and-coming. She's been in a lot of stuff, but I want everyone to know her name, man. She was really good. Her emotion is conveyed well on screen, as well as Natalia Reyes. She's kind of the focus of this film. Very similar story beats. Once again, I don't want to go into detail, but you guys will know it when you see it. And it's going to be something that ends up being divisive. I think hardcore fans are going to be split. Some are going to like the new direction. Others are not. Gabriel Luna is a cool villain. He's a familiar villain, but I believe he does what he has to do to work as that villainous presence. One thing that I wish this movie would have focused on more is the newer characters. They're built up, but not in such a way that Sarah Connor was in the original, and heck, even Arnold's Terminator was in the original. Arnold is back, like I said, and I really loved their presence, just kind of like that passing the mantle feel. It worked really well. We did focus on Sarah Connor probably more than we should have in terms of what they were going for with these new characters. That doesn't bother me. I love Sarah Connor, one of my favorite lead characters in a sci-fi franchise of all time. By the way, I didn't even mention it, the score for this film. I loved the score so much. Of course, the original Terminator score is iconic. Those moments come into play in this film. It brings that sense of nostalgia, but it also works so well for where the story is going. I don't know if this movie was as necessary as they're making it out to be. I really enjoyed some moments. Other moments fell flat. I wish the dialogue was a bit better. The story was interesting. Nothing that blew me away. I'm struggling with my score. I don't know whether I should lean more towards the 7 range or the 6 range, so here's what I'll do. 65%. That's how this channel works. That is my score for Terminator Dark Fate. Like I said, some people are going to say it's unnecessary. They may not love the direction that it ends up going in. I thought it was okay. We finally got a sequel that did bring us some nice moments, had solid direction, something I think has been missing since James Cameron had those first 2 films. Tim Miller, the guy's a good director. Maybe he'll get a chance to come back and show even more of what he's made of. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. That is my review for Terminator Dark Fate. Let me know in the comments, are you heavily attached to this franchise? Were you looking forward to this sequel? I wasn't necessarily looking forward to it. I didn't love the trailers all that much, but hey, in terms of what I gave it as my score, it was kind of a surprise. Thank you once again for watching. Thank you for all of your support on Patreon. If you like this review, be sure to hit that thumbs up. And later on this week, I will be ranking all of the Terminator movies. Be on the lookout for that. I'm going to try the Arnold voice again.